important one. The exploration of the model for mature collective bargaining proposed by Don Wright, and a recommendation on government on how to implement this model as soon as possible. Madam Speaker, this model would have us replace legislation with binding arbitration as the final resolution to an impasse at the bargaining table. It's time to make that move, Madam Speaker. I also recommend that all parties agree at the outset that they will adhere to the findings of the industrial inquiry and implement its recommendations immediately. Under the current model, Madam Speaker, teachers do not have a real right to strike, and the BCTF takes extreme positions at the bargaining table as a political strategy because they know that ultimately their collective agreement will be decided by the politics of the day and not through the bargaining process. Under the current model, BCPC does not have a legitimate role as the employer at the bargaining table. And Madam Speaker, if we continue on the current path, I think we do a service to British Columbians if BCPC is simply disbanded and the cost savings put into the education system. Under the current model, the government will always negate teachers' collective bargaining rights through legislation whenever the BCTF doesn't concede to its demands or it wants to control education costs unilaterally. I believe that teacher bargaining in this province must be more structured and must have imposed on it the honesty and deliberateness that a threat of binding arbitration would bring and remove that threat of legislation. Interestingly, Bob Pleck has pointed out on The Voice of BC last week that teachers were the second highest paid in the country and enjoyed reasonable relationships with their boards prior to 1987 when they gained the right to collective bargaining. So before they had the right to strike and collective bargaining, they were actually in a better position with their employers, and they were a better position financially across the province. Now, since 1987 to now, after that length of time with the right to strike, with collective bargaining, and the BCTF as their voice, 25 years, teachers are now the 9th lowest paid, and they have intractable relationships with successive governments. If a collaborative approach is not possible today, Madam Speaker, then I urge the government to withdraw Bill 22, and this is my offer, withdraw Bill 22 and replace it with a bill that simply legislates a collective agreement until June 30th, 2013, because that's the path we're on, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, I don't have all day,
Leaving the hard work of finding a real solution to the next
you can come back down and start folding this up here pretty
Bill
soon.
Bill 22, I guarantee you, we will be back here in the fall to impose a collective agreement on the teachers anyway.
So you end up washing it again, right?
Otherwise, what I'm suggesting, Madam Speaker, and I know the Minister would like to find a resolution to this, find that extra money. It's there in the industrial school tax. It could be just reinstated. And also, Madam Speaker, make sure that we move this entire system to something that is more productive, more proactive, more collaborative. And that is embedded in Don Wright's report from 2004. In the educational community, Don Wright's report was accepted as a potential way forward with the exception of the BCTF. And so this is a challenge to the BCTF on behalf of its members to go back and look at that report again. And instead of having to confront legislation every time they come to the bargaining table, they would have to confront binding arbitration. That's what Don Wright proposed, and he lays out the whole model. What that would do, Madam Speaker, in my estimation, is it would put honesty at the table. BCPC and BCTF would be forced, because they know an arbitrator is going to look at their proposals, they would be forced to come to the table in a more reasonable fashion. An arbitrator would also comment on what the government is doing, and that's why the government would not necessarily want to go down this path. But for the sake of our teachers, for the sake of the education system, for the sake of resolving this intractable dispute, and to be able to move on, I strongly recommend that that's what the Minister do, is take another look at Don Wright's report, have that report brought into this House for further discussion if necessary, or to the Education Committee as necessary, but to make that the path that we're going on, or withdraw Bill 22 and give us a bill imposing a collective agreement, because as I said, Madam Speaker, that's the end game anyway. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member. And I recognize the member for Caribou-Chilcotin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I stand here to support Bill 22. Bill 22, the Education Improvement Act. And I appreciate my colleague across the floor talking about past history in education prior to 1987 and what the system was like then. I'd like to go a little further back because I'm a little older. I'd like to go way back, probably 45 years to what the education system was like then, when we had 45 of us in a classroom, where when the teacher walked in, we sat still, we listened, we did our work, and we moved on. If you didn't, Madam Speaker, I can guarantee you sitting on your hands for an hour after school and walking 5 miles home because the bus wouldn't wait for you and there was nobody there to pick you up, and speaking to the parents when you got back to the house showed you what discipline was. And believe you me, Madam Speaker, it certainly didn't hurt us. We have come a long way since then, and I don't believe it's for the betterment of education, the betterment of students, the betterment of teachers, or the betterment of society as a whole. I think we have to stop and think and look, what are we trying to accomplish? Through Bill 22, we're trying to accomplish a cooling off period, that we can sit and we can hopefully talk, that we can move forward. There is, and I agree with my colleague across the floor, that there is a fundamental problem within many of our social systems today, and we must stop, look, listen, and make changes. You know, Bill 2022 has a lot of good initiatives in it that I think have been lost in the political part of the discussion. It sets out this cooling period and a mediation process to bring a responsible conclusion to this dispute and provide certainty for students, parents, class sizes. Let's talk about class sizes and take a look what Bill 22. It says for grade 4 to 12, we are putting in place class size maximum of 30 students. There was no maximum in place before. Grade 4 to 12 classes can exceed the maximum if necessary, but only if the principal considers the learning conditions appropriate and the superintendent approves that decision. In these cases, the teacher will be entitled to additional compensation, increased pay, additional preparation time, professional development funding, or a combination.
I'm just doing this
We
crap in
believe
here.
and expect that these changes will actually result in fewer classes, over 30 students.
What's that?
I had the privilege of meeting with the school board in School District 27 this weekend, and I am very glad to say that I was told there are no class sizes over 30 in School District 27. You know, government spending on education is at record levels and has grown every year for 9 consecutive years. Next year will be no exception and will mark a full decade of continual funding increases capped off by the highest level of per-student funding in BC's history. In 2012-2013, the overall education budget will grow to $5.3 billion. That is an overall increase of 29% since 2000 and 2001. We have increased funding in spite of the fact that during this same time period, enrollment has dropped by more than 59,000 students. The province is delivering an estimated $8,491 in average per pupil funding in 2011-2012, the highest ever. Bill 22 seeks to suspend disruptive strike activity and establish, as I said before, a cooling off period, appoint a mediator to facilitate bargaining, and implement a $165 million learning improvement fund and other improvements benefiting teachers and students. In short, the Education Improvement Act will put more money into the classroom, improve supports for students and teachers, compensate teachers for large classes, and restore the opportunity to bargain class size and related matters. These gains recognize the important role and contribution of teachers. And Madam Speaker, we all appreciate teachers. I am a grandmother. My grandson is going to graduate in June. And boy, will be I some kind of an angry grandmother if there's something in the way of stopping my grandson from graduating other than his own work habits. So, Madam Speaker, I think it is so important that we pass Bill 22, have a cooling off period, work together for the betterment of students, parents, teachers, and at the end of the day, take a good look at what is wrong with the system and make major improvements. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay, so I'm going to have to turn this off because I got to get up into this corner over here. Well, actually, maybe we'll listen to Bruce Ralston because he's the member to you know, he's the representative for my constituency. So, you know, so I think we should just give him some due respect. So we'll just turn this.